Thank you, Glenn. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land wherever we're meeting in Australia today, and pay my respects to them and their culture and to elders past, present and emerging. We're on our 5th day of Men's Health Connected. It's been going pretty well. In fact, more than pretty well. It's been going very well, and it's been very exciting for me to be a part of this on most days I've been here. I think it's great. I just wanted to pay some early acknowledgement to Glenn and our team of workers and board members who put a lot of time and energy into this. And I really like this session. This is great. I've been on Google trying to find out the collective word for elders. I don't know if anybody knows what it is, but I've come up with a band of elders. I was looking for something that's a bit blokey. You could also have a tribe, or you could also, in these social media days, have a galaxy of elders if you wanted to. But the gentlemen that we've got speaking to us this afternoon are all very special in their own way. And I'm very excited that they're here, and I want to hear what they've got to say. They've been some amazing men who've been working with other men for a very long time now. And I hope Glenn has got that video going, because I want to move into this. We'll be going through in order. We'll be talking, Frank will be talking first. Frank, then Kevin, then Ross, then Peter and Wes. 10 minutes each, roughly. I will be timing it at 10 minutes, and I'm warning you now, if I can find my phone, I'm quite vicious with time. So I will keep you to 10 minutes. And that gives us more discussion at the end. I'd really like to see a lot of discussion happen in the end. We've got Frank in the room, yes, somewhere? Frank,
yep, I'm here.
You're there. There you are. Great. Good on you. Now, Frank Cowell served in the Australian Army as an infantry soldier for 25 years. Can I just say thank you, Frank, for doing that?
No
we don't thank our servicemen and women in this country enough. Thank you. Frank has been directly involved with men for most of his life, and he's been part of Shed Happens for the past 13 years. So I'll just hand over to Frank. You've got about 10 minutes, Frank. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. I'll wait for Glenn to get that video up, and then I'll put the PowerPoint up.
I think I'll share this now. See how we go.
Yep.
Let's start my video. Just let me know if you're not seeing anything. First time I've tried this, so fingers crossed, everyone.
Shed Happens is a non-threatening, safe environment for blokes to share their stories, the good, the bad, the happy and the sad.
I found a real comradeship among men. All of the men that come here, they're all great fellas and they're good to talk to.
And it just gives them an opportunity to, connect with other blokes with similar stories and whatever level that may be.
I would really recommend any man from the age of 14 upwards to come to Shed.
Shed Happens, quality time with other blokes from around Mackay. 6:30 the third Wednesday of every month. Working on hearts, not projects.
Thanks, Glenn. I'm trying to hit share screen, but I've lost Zoom for some reason.
That's all right. Just find your face on your screen and open up the box.
My face isn't on it. Yours is.
Yeah. So
mine's not there.
Yeah. Press escape maybe, so you've got a small screen.
I've hit escape. Nothing's happened. Here we go.
And hover over the bottom bar there to find the slides.
Yeah, I've just got the Zoom word in the middle of the frame, Glenn, and nothing else. I've got your photo in the top right.
Yeah, you need to open up the Zoom. You need to open it up somehow so you can share the screen.
Yeah, I did share screen already.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I've got post attendee for some reason. Let me get rid of that. Let me come back in, Glenn.
Okay.
So
here we go. Right.
Yeah.
I'll try it now. Share screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me just double check that we've got you on as. Yeah, there we go. Hang on. Here we go. Right.
We're good?
Try again.
Okay, here we go. Hopefully.
Yes. We've got your black screen and hopefully
Here we
we'll
go.
see. Yes. Okay. If you can make that bigger with the little.
Yeah,
little
well done, mate.
let's do that. Cool. Well done, Frank.
Here we go, I think. Should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one. If you hit that one, it should make it bigger.
All right. Can do it. Here we
There
go.
we go.
Right.
You're on.
Okay. Well, the subject of this session focuses on older men. Shed Happens services all men from puberty through to the sages in our society. There's a word for you, Greg, sages. As our motto states, we work on hearts, not projects. While the men's shed movement's really well known, our sheds are not well known at all, even though there is over 50 of them Australia-wide. We have sheds in every state, and they operate and started about 20 years ago. So what Shed Happens? Well, it's a non-judgmental, non-manipulative, safe place for blokes to share their stories, the good, the bad, the happy and the sad. To learn from other blokes through their stories and pursue a personal connection with other blokes. I'll brief these in a moment. And learn about the challenges that other blokes face. So it's non-judgmental and non-manipulative and safe because we do it at a bloke's house, underneath his house. Here in North Queensland, of course, we have houses up on stilts and built in usually underneath. And so we hold our shed there once a month rather, around a barbecue. Barbecue is the best place to get blokes talking. And we have a man's barbecue. We don't have not plates. We don't have knives and forks. We have a big hamburger bun, real good steak and good hamburger patties. And as you're chomping into your burger and the juice is running down your elbow, it's good to see if anyone can lick the juice off their elbow because that's impossible. And in the other hand, they've got a soft drink. We don't have grog at Shed Happens. And the reason for that is that we want the real story, not the wished for story. All of us, regardless of our experience, go through similar experiences through our lives. Although, however, the experience of that and the way it plays out for each of us is an individual story. And that's why we focus on blokes' stories. And we interview them about their life, not the career side of life, but the personal side of life. And the reason for that, of course, is that it's the personal stuff that we blokes sometimes have difficulties dealing with. And when we're deep in the strife in the personal side, it certainly feels like you're on an island, isolated on your own. Pursuing a personal connection with other blokes is about supporting each other. In Shed, our motto is, no bloke ever went backwards with encouragement. So we're all about encouraging blokes. And we learn about the challenges that other blokes face. And again, I come back to when you're deep in strife, you feel like you're alone, but there's plenty of other blokes who have been through similar experiences that you can talk to or who can come up and empathise with you. The personal connection, they say that if you haven't got a best mate by the time you're 25 years of age, your chances of having one of those is pretty slim. Probably for older men, this is not quite so much the case because we do our working life, we move around a bit, and then we tend to settle down when we retire or close to retirement age. And that's when we can pursue some other personal connections. Okay, so this is the bloke who founded Shed Happens, a bloke by the name of Ian Watson. Watto was a larger-than-life bloke, had a heart as big as you could tell on his sleeve. And as I say, his motto was, no bloke ever went backward with encouragement. He was a truck driving instructor, and he found that being in the cab of a truck with blokes, teaching them how to drive B-doubles, you can only say change gear every now and again. And he got to talking to these blokes and hearing their stories. And when blokes are going for a truck driving licence, oftentimes they're taking a major change in their life through a personal problem or whatever. So he started getting these blokes together and inviting them around his place to have a barbie and start to tell their stories. That's where Shed started. Unfortunately, Watto passed away last December. There was about 3,500 at his memorial service in Brisbane. A top bloke. Our role, with the passing of Watto, our role hasn't changed. We are still about encouraging blokes and lifting them up. And we're here to encourage blokes to be the best men they can be and to pick them up when they fall, as we invariably do. So the effects of COVID-19 on our sheds. We've gone from monthly barbecue meetings to having Zoom meetings twice a month, the first and the third Wednesday of the month. We had one last Wednesday, and it was probably the best one we've had since the COVID-19 hit us. We had a great story from a bloke down at Harvey Bay. He'd been through the ringer a number of times, and it was good to hear his story. And there were plenty of blokes nodding their head as he was telling his story, attesting to the fact that they'd been there and done that too. We have had limited contact with probably 60% of the blokes that used to come to our face-to-face shed in Mackay. That's been difficult, and I'll talk a little bit about the things we've done to facilitate that a little bit later. And the other one is the lack of personal connection. There's a number of things happening in our community these days. If you speak out about, you're liable to get condemned and everything else. But my belief is that the handshake is an absolute part of every man. So my thing is that I still shake hands with blokes, and then I say, wash our hands. So I have a bottle of that hand sanitizer, and I throw that on my hands and give it to the other bloke as well. I think the handshake is just so integral to being a bloke, certainly in my experience and my time, that just saying, oh, no, we're not going to do that because of the chance of spreading a virus or something, I think in some place it holds merit. For me, I just can't do it. So we do the cleanse yourself afterwards and still do the handshake. I have to say, not everybody's doing that, but in day-to-day life, I'm noticing a lot of blokes are not hesitating to shake hands. The effects of COVID-19 on our blokes. First one, of course, is isolation. We have a number of men that are single men through divorce, partners dying, all sorts of reasons. And a lot of them are feeling very isolated and have become isolated because of not being able to get out and about. And poor health has isolated some of them as well. A number of our older men are struggling with health issues, and they're not game to go out in case they come across somebody who could pass the virus onto them. Technology. Zoom is a great thing, but as we see, it has its technology challenges. A number of our shed blokes are challenged by the technology because they don't have devices that have enough gigabytes or whatever on them to make it happen. I was talking to one of those blokes this morning. He tried to get onto our shed meeting and he said he was told by Telstra he didn't have enough gigabytes in his machine.
Yep. You got a couple of minutes, Frank.
Okay. And mental health. Mental stress, what does the future hold? That's what blokes are worried about. This is the last slide. Our way of countering the COVID-19 problems, we've been communicating by phone. We've split up our database to about 8 blokes each, and we contact them on a regular basis. Where possible, we do personal visits. We get out and visit these blokes and have a cuppa near them or with them and have a bit of a chat. And the last one is SMS messages. We've been sending out SMS messages of encouragement all the way through. I come back to this slide because this is the ethos of who we are. We encourage blokes every opportunity we get, and no bloke ever went backwards with encouragement.
Great. Thanks, Frank. A lot of things for us to think about in there, and we've had a morning of getting different opinions and views about off and on about the virus and how it's affecting people, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about that in this session. Kevin James is up next, who works for the Circle of Men companionship program that supports and nurtures men living in aged care. Circle of Men is just that, men of all ages coming together in a circle, sharing their songs, stories, their joys and their sorrows, their hopes and their fears. Our volunteers develop skills to firstly care for themselves and each other. I like that angle, before offering to help others. But also, apart from having a great deal of fun, they can learn to trust and depend on each other, creating a deeper sense of purpose and direction in their lives. And hand over to Kevin. There we are.
Thank you, Greg, and also Glenn, for the opportunity to speak today. And I know we all have a lot of things in common at the grassroots here when we're trying to look after men's health physically and, of course, mentally with the challenges we've got at the moment. What I'd like to do today is just very briefly, you've done a great intro for us, talk a little bit about what Circle of Men normally does and some of the challenges we've had to face in recent weeks. The mental health and well-being is so important, especially in aged care. And just to let people know, we have 15 aged care facilities in Brisbane where we would normally have weekly sessions for 90 minutes with our residents, but they've all been shut down over the last 10 or 12 weeks. But I'll move into what we're doing shortly. Our mission, as you've said, is to support men in aged care and to alleviate social isolation and loneliness. As we all know, for many men, loss of independence when they go into a nursing home is a very traumatic experience. Perhaps they've lost their license, can't drive. They've lost their circle of friends. All their work buddies are long retired. Maybe they've lost their wife or a significant other. So we're dealing a lot often with depression, loss of identity, and as people have brought up already, certain generations of men, we just don't talk, do we? It's very hard to open up, and we need to provide that safe space. That's what we try to do at Circle of Men, provide a safe environment. What's said in the room stays in the room, and trust is what we have to build up. It's very important, making sure that everybody trusts everybody, and that's so rewarding for both parties, for the residents and for the volunteers when this is happening. How do we do this? Well, Circle of Men, we're not trained experts. We're just average volunteers who are concreters, taxi drivers, registered nurses, and we do have some great skills. We try and achieve that through active listening. We really have to listen to what our residents are saying, and we try and do that by share common experiences. We use music, we use reminiscing as a tool, and it's okay. We always say this, I say this, it's okay to not feel okay. We have to explore those negative emotions and be non-judgmental and celebrate the positive things that we talk about during the days when we have our sessions. It's not our role to offer advice, obviously, but I'd like to quote what one of our residents says, and this is a fictitious name, we'll say Bill. Bill always says to me, a problem shared is a problem halved. And he's right. We love to hear about what's going on in their lives. And like I said, we try and provide this safe space to do so. We sit in a circle, and as you're all well aware with men's groups, many of them may use a talking stick, which is what we use to pass around and make sure everybody has his say. Therapeutic touch. Frank talked about handshaking. And I'm going to move into what's happening now with the COVID-19 crisis. A lot of that personal touch has been taken away because we can't be there present with them. Many of the fellas have physical or mental issues, and it's important to have that physical touch. So what we've tried to do during COVID-19 is enable Zoom sessions to take place. And with limited success, we've been able to do that for a few weeks now at 3 of our nursing homes. It's more about training the diversional therapists, really, or the staff, how to use the devices and iPads and so on and so forth. But it has been successful in a couple of the places we go to. And once the technology is understood, it's been working quite well to share a few stories, and we can still sing together online, which is great. We can still provide a listening ear, and we can still encourage them, but it is difficult. Some of the nursing homes, and this has only happened this week due to the relaxation or the bringing forward of the stage 2 restrictions, we've been able to allow some visits. So if you book in and ring up the nursing home, you can actually go in and see a friend, one of your residents, not in an official capacity as our Circle of Men brand, but we can go in for a short period of time and talk to them. Other nursing homes have allowed us to send cards, to send gifts, to phone them up. So there is still some contact, but not every one of the residents is able to cognitively engage in that. So there are problems, and we'd like more to happen once stage 3 comes around. And to that end, I've got some very good news on the aged care front, at least from our perspective. We have our first face-to-face session going on right now on the south side of Brisbane, and they're doing the social spacing 1.5 metres apart, and I will find out tonight how well that went. And next week on Wednesday, my own session that I attend is allowing a very small get-together in one wing. Some of the nursing homes have an issue with the residents still mixing. I know there's a code of practice just recently been passed through the Senate with regard to visitations, but again, each nursing home, due to manpower, funding, etc., is able to achieve some of those goals better than others. So next week I'll be going into the nursing home I visit for a short while to talk one-on-one with a few of the residents. So moving forward, we're hoping that this will open up even further. Probably most of you know that nursing homes are for women and men, but a lot of you may not realize that on average, statistics tell us that 90% of nursing homes are female dominated and 10% are men due to the over 85 statistic. So Circle of Men plays a very important role in allowing the men to be able to talk about what's important to them at this time in their life. So I'm always looking to ask the guys to contribute and look at it from their angle. As I said before, active listening is so important, and we want the guys to talk to each other when we're not there. So to summarize, our goal is to provide some support, but when we're not there, we want the fellas to go and talk to each other and support each other. And that's where the trust and the supportive environment comes in. For example, and in closing, I would like to say one of our gentlemen, he's celebrating his 100th birthday next week. And it's very heartening to know that the other aged care residents, the males who had never met beforehand, they have been keeping him company. And that's great to hear that they're supporting each other while we're not there. But we're really looking forward to the COVID-19 crisis being over and getting back into the environment for that face-to-face, that therapeutic touch, shaking of hands, and where permission is granted, sometimes a bear hug is required. And I can hear in the background Wash and Tara laughing about bear hugs. I know he is, because that's his and my favourite form of communication. So thank you for the opportunity today, and back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for coming in right on time. That's great. And yes, sounds like some great work that you're doing. I'm just checking, do we have Ross in the room?
Yes, I am.
Ah, there you are. Good. Thanks, Ross. Ross was born in Bunbury in Western Australia in 1949 and raised on a dairy farm. After university studies and military service, he taught high school health and physical education and later moved into school leadership positions, including being a principal. Ross's recent focus is on volunteering men's work, including the Circle of Men, Dads, Kids and Learning, and leading men's groups in aged care settings. The Circle of Men project has included a book on men's stories. Ross is currently a pastoral care worker in an aged care establishment and is again gathering stories for his next publication, or first or next. Leave it over to you, Ross.
Thanks, Greg. I too want to try to share screen.
Ooh.
If you can enable that for me, it'd be great.
I might need Glenn to do that if he's in the room.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he is. I think my skills don't extend to being able to do that, Ross, unless you can do it.
Okay.
Can you do it at your end?
He's not here. No, I'm getting, the host has disabled it, so I need the host to enable it.
Okay. I'll get on to Glenn and see if he can do that. And,
okay.
Okay. Can you move on and tell us a bit more?
I can begin while we're waiting for that. I want to begin by acknowledging a good friend of men's work in Peter Fry. Many of you would know Peter. He was instrumental here in the West in lots of men's work, including initiating the Circle of Men, and unfortunately Peter died last October, so I do want to acknowledge the contribution that he's made, and I do miss him terribly. There's 2 or 3 things I wanted to talk about. The Circle that are related to the topic. The first one is the Circle of Men, and Kevin's given a pretty good outline of how that operates. And we also acknowledge the fact that WA's model is based on what we learned from Queensland. So thank you to those guys. I won't go, and I was hoping for the visual, but they're still not here. Pattern that we follow is pretty much the same as Queensland. So we need to have an arrangement with a aged care residents. We need to have them on board as a partnership to enable the groups to operate and so forth. Once that's underway, it's really a case of the volunteers. Yep.
Ross, you can try again now. We've made you a host. You should be able to do it.
Okay. No, I'm still getting that same error message. The host has disabled the participant screen sharing. So, we usually go in as a pair of volunteers. Sometimes we need to structure the conversation quite a bit because some of these blokes are not self-starters. They need quite a bit of guidance. What I did want to go on to, and I had some images, but I'm using my other computer here, so forgive the side of my face for a minute here. One of the things I did want to go on to is, first of all, the book. Yes, we did. We thought the stories were so good that we sought all appropriate permissions and so forth, and we published a lot of the stories in the book. And that was really interesting because all of the men that were involved and their extended families saw that little icon or that little emblem, if you like, as being an important part of the whole project. And I think at some level, actually committing stories to paper in this stage kind of deepened the validation that whole exercise entailed for the men. Often when we would go back to men's groups, they would talk about, or circles of men, they would talk about their place in the book, and they'd proudly show their book to their family and so on. So I think that triggered another thought for me that maybe we could take that to another level. So one of the other things that I'm doing is in my current work, and this is paid work as a pastoral care provider, part-time, and I'm doing what I'm calling a poster project. So in the poster project, we're actually gathering the stories from, in this case, about 10 residents, just to make it doable. And we're trying to capture that person's life in what's effectively an A2 sheet, which is a very small poster. And the poster is going to include a photograph, some text, and then just a bunch of key words that somehow try to capture that person's contribution and their character. Now, you would all know that the actual poster itself is important, but it's the journey getting to the poster that is even more important. So all of the depth, the conversations that need to go on between, in this case, it's me and each of those residents to really draw the detail of the story out. All of the depth of listening that goes with that, and Kev's already alluded to that. You know, you've got to listen really, really carefully and go back and double check, is this what you mean? Is this what happened? We're then connecting with family as well and having them not so much validate the story, because the story belongs to the man. In this case, there's some women involved as well. Not to validate it, but to be a part of that as well. And it's really, I'm finding it really, really interesting to see the learning, the enlightenment that I see on the faces of these 40, 50, 60-year-old children, if you like, as they're sitting there listening to their dad tell the story. It's really heartwarming stuff. So that's a nice project. The other, I've also extended the Circle of Men. We wanted to honour Peter's memory by keeping the Circle of Men quite rigid, which is what Peter wanted to do, and I think there's some wisdom in that. I wanted to go broader, so we've started some kind of regular men's groups in aged care, and they're working quite well. And I really got thinking about, so what is it that actually works? Or why does it work? And just forgive me a side of my head again while I go back and get my notes. I think the essence, it seems to me the essence of, and I've called this emotional and spiritual development, because I think that's what we're talking about as well. And it seems to me the essence of that is connection, meaning, and purpose. If we can embrace those three ideas when we're having these conversations with men, I think it really brings them along a little bit. Now, why does it work so well? I think for lots of men that I meet in aged care, fear is about, what does it look like as my life is changing? What's it going to look like as I get even more frail and I go into the death transition? The grief and loss is about, I've lost my family home, I may have lost my partner, I may have lost the health that I'm familiar with, and so on. So a lot of these men are really struggling with that kind of thing. And so I believe, and I've yet to check this empirically, but I believe what we're dealing with here is, or that as conversations can actually be transformative. You can't say to those men, okay, you just got to get over the grief, just suck it up and get on with it. I don't think that's helpful. But I think we can transform that grief. And the conversations, and again, Kev alluded to this, if those men can carry on the conversation from the group or from the circle, they can carry it on with men after we've left in their own facility, I think that helps to transform this grief. And we channel the energy into talking with other men, into validating each other, into feeling validated ourselves and so on. So that's Ross's theory about one of the reasons why it works. I think the other thing is with men's work, there's something to look forward to when you talk with these old blokes and say, you know, I'm going to come back next week. And we often hear feedback where these guys say, look, this is the most important thing that happens for us in a whole fortnight. So, you know, they've got to be looking forward to something. I think there's positive energy into that. I think the other thing is the sustained connection with somebody outside of the confines of their residence. My sense is that that's got to be important to a lot of these older blokes as well. And some of the older blokes I'm talking about here are well into their 90s, and some of them a lot younger. And the other one I want to come back to is that whole notion of meaning and purpose. I came to today's session directly from an aged care place, and the conversation there was, tell us about some of the events in your life that were maybe life-changing. Maybe not at the time, but when you look back on it. So guys talked about when I moved from one city to another, when my first child was born, when I met the love of my life, when I did national service. So when they can go back and construct some meaning, or they can not only construct, but they can see a greater level of meaning and purpose in their life. And somehow I think that's really nourishing and nurturing for those men. So that's kind of my sense of why it works as well as it does. And I want to leave you with the notion that this is not really that hard, and I'm sure Kevin would allude to that as well. And I think any man who has an interest in older men, I can't see a good reason why you couldn't go down and bang on the door of the manager of your local aged care facility and say, I would like to come in and I'd like to start a little group with 2 or 3 men, and we're just going to chew the fat a little bit. Now, it does need a bit of structure. What we've done with all of ours, in all of the work that I do, I always have a project plan. And I always share the project plan with the manager. I'm seeing Effie laughing at me because he knows I'm a bit anal. But I always have a little project plan, so it's really, really clear. What is it that we're trying to do? What are you going to do as the partner? What will I commit to do as the partner? And how will we, what are the ground rules for the conversation? So it's just some simple ground rules so everybody's on the same page. And if there is a little hiccup along the way, we can go back and remind ourselves about what the hell it is we're trying to do. So my encouragement to you...
1 minute, Ross.
I'm done. My encouragement to any man would be to give it a go, And there are people like myself, and I'm sure the guys in Queensland that would be happy to back that up with some little tools that might help you in your journey. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thanks, Ross. That's great. Has anyone noticed that our entire panel comes from Queensland and West Australia? Where most of this work happens, most of this good work happens, I might point out. There is good work happening in other states, but predominantly this style of men's work has been famous in both Western Australia and Queensland. Now, it's I'm very honoured to be able to introduce our next 2 speakers, Wes Carter and Peter Efford. They're amazing if you don't know who they are. They've been doing men's work for a very long time. And I think it was last year or the year before, I went on one of their Bali retreats over to Ubud and spent a week or more with them. They're amazing. They are really good at the work that they've done. Wes is the only person in Australia who's ever received an AOM award for men's health. That's pretty amazing and something we could probably all aspire to, but I think that's great. I'm sure he deserves it. They are fantastic at what they do. I was really interested in their work. I was in a strange space in my life at the time, but I certainly came away from that much happier and much more confident in a whole range of ways, which I won't go into. Wes first was born in Kalgoorlie in 1937, left school at 15 and took on an apprenticeship as a tractor fitter. And he worked in various positions, fire and rescue service, managing up to 30 technicians, and for 23 years prior to retirement in 1994. Wes has been organising, participating, facilitating and leading men's groups since the early 80s. He initiated the Compass Men's Support Group, a weekly open group for men. The group numbered in excess of 30 men at its peak. With Peter, he's a founder member of the Men's Work Project also, 20 years in facilitation. He's an author and artist and co-designer with Wes of the Elders Way programs. And they reminded me when I was there, I wasn't on an Elders Way program, but elders is actually not a dirty word. It's actually quite a good thing. And I'd love to take up the Elders Way sometime in the future. Peter promotes men's health issues through the MWP website and in association with West Australian men's gatherings. And more recently, he's written The Castle Without Walls, but more recently he's written a thing called the Momentum Concept that a number of us have seen and greatly appreciate. And he might tell us a bit more about that. But that document is an outstanding move in the men's health sector in this company, and in this country, I mean, and I'd thoroughly recommend that to people. Wes and Peter, over to you. You unmute yourself. That's it.
Done?
Yep.
Okay, here we are. So we're a double act. So do we get double time, or how does it work?
Yes, you do. No, you get 20 minutes for both of you.
Well, that should be sufficient, I think. Thanks very much.
Okay.
And, Thank you also for the introduction. And we're going to kind of organise ourselves a little bit here. So I'm going to kind of give a little bit of a background about why and how West Australia happens to be, as you said, you know, a kind of focal point for men's work in Australia, along with Queensland. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about, Wes is going to talk about the Elders Way and the programs that we're currently designing because of the COVID event happening. So just as a background, probably West Australia has a couple of things that just create a background of relationship with men's work. One is that Western Australia's scale is not large in terms of population, and we've got a very keen community sense amongst everything that goes on, let's say in the Perth region particularly, but also in the country. So we have that as a strong kind of background. And another part of it is because of our sense of community, we've been encouraged by a kind of outside force, which is the West Australian Lotteries Commission, which has been around since 1932 and regularly places a lot of money into all forms of community support for any organisation that is who has an incorporated body. So with that kind of background, they drop about $1.2 million every year into community work in Western Australia. Now, it's pretty hard when you think, oh, I can think of my own town here in Kalamunda, where there are probably 30 or 40 community groups that are funded by lotteries. And so this is a non-government organisation. This is a commission that only needs to be signed off by the government. So you can imagine in Western Australia, the quality and the amount of community support that's already in the community, simply by people simply choosing to interact into a community environment, whether it's sport or men's work or culture or whatever. We already have this kind of safety net and cushion of funding for initiatives. And I think that has a lot to say about where we are in terms of our community responses, particularly when matters like COVID come up. So just as we move towards what's happening for men in this more recent time, that background has also proliferated in terms of the numbers of men's groups we have in Western Australia, particularly the fact that we've been having, because of Wes here, we've been having men's gatherings here. We've had our 25th men's gathering just last year. So, and this is kind of men's central in terms of exchange of ideas and ways in which men can be supported. It's not what we often consider to be a kind of a men's gathering of the sort of mythopoetic variety, but it does happen in that way in parts of it. But largely, it's a meeting place where we swap ideas and what's going on and who's doing what, and it really is a very useful kind of place in which we can have other groups integrate with what's happening all across Western Australia. So that's really one good part of it. The other is that, for instance, our organisation, the Men's Work Project, has been really operating since about 1995, but became an incorporated body in 2001. And the other thing that's really just so encouraging is that we're getting new kids on the block in Western Australia. And this is a lovely opportunity to mention the work of Miles Prout and men's business. And I think Miles is on the call, so he can drop up his contact details with us right now. But to take us across to the domain that Wes and I particularly work in, and Wes will also talk about the other work that we're doing inside the Men's Work Project. I thought I would just use Miles's quotation about why elders are important people. And he says, elders are like a warm fire people want to huddle around, and they create an environment where a lot of things can change simply because of their presence and the fact that elders have a very, if it's accepted inside a culture, elders have a very powerful role to play in our community. So that's a kind of background about what's happening in Western Australia. And the COVID part of it has, in a way, shifted the focus, obviously, to online events. But here in Western Australia, the COVID business has almost been and gone. We got upset and worried around March, but this coming Monday, we could have gatherings of 100 people, and there is a lot, presumably going to be the opening of restaurants and things completely. So in a way, the opportunity of all of the COVID part has been that we have planned into the COVID concept. It's included in our thinking, and we've actually invented a whole new raft of ways in which we can communicate as a result of that, which are going to happen well after COVID's been and gone, hopefully. So there we go. That's my kind of background part of it, and I'm going to hand you over to Wes now, and he's going to take us into the Men's Work project.
That's actually a hard act to follow. Greg, g'day. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I just love this this cooperative effort that's happening all over Australia at the moment. It's I think it's leading on to something even larger, because for as you would probably know, we all work in isolation from each other. You know, we all run the flag up and say this is the one that we've got. But just so fantastic to have a wide range of cooperative effort and the difference and the sameness. Yeah, that's fantastic. The Elders Way is a program that you know that we run over 8 days. It's a residential retreat in Bali. Ostensibly, it's the encouragement for men who are aged 50 plus, and it usually has an appeal for guys who are probably 60 plus. Over the 8 days, is to have a look at their lives. The encouragement is about continued personal work, how they are in the world, who they are in the world. It's very supportive, it's very encouraging. And sometimes we can, as you would know, Greg, we can make it a little bit challenging to take what they're saying a little bit further. So yeah, we've been doing that for a long time, but unfortunately, COVID-19 has now prevented us from travelling to Bali. And Peter and I are looking at being able to offer a form of the Elders Way over a whole week here in WA, where we would, we'll bring on men who are interested in going on this particular journey. They'll be meeting with Peter and myself. They'll be meeting on Zoom. There'll be, I can't tell you any more because it's secret at this moment in time. One of the things about being an elder, both of us were encouraged by a younger man many years ago who literally forced us into the acceptance of the descriptor of being an elder. And without any permission, I'm just going to read this. This is a thing called Becoming an Elder, and it was written by a woman called Kathy Carmody in August 2012. Becoming an Elder. For those who are watching and who listening who may be interested in what is an elder anyway. So here it is. Leaving behind my journey of struggling and racing through the white water of many rivers, I become the river, creating my own unique way. Leaving behind my self-imposed role as a tree upon which others have leaned, I now become the wind with the freedom to blow whenever and wherever I choose. Leaving behind the boxes I've created in my life, crammed with roles, responsibility, rules and fears, I become the wild and unpredictable space within which flowers sprout and grow. Leaving behind the years of yearning for others to see me as somebody I softened become my future, with permission from self to continually unfold as I choose, without concern for how others may see me. Leaving behind years of telling and teaching, I become instead a mirror into which others can peer and view reflections of themselves to consider. Leaving behind the urge to provide answers for others, I become, in silence of this forest retreat, the question. Leaving behind the rigour of my intellect, I become a single candle in the darkness, offering myself as a beacon for others to create their own path. I become an elder. I love that. Yeah, something about the encouragement for inner reflection, to go deeper. Who am I? What am I doing in the world? Why am I here? How can I be of service to others? It's a lifelong journey. And I'm, you know, at 82, I'm just wondering when can I stop, apart from ending up in a box and being carried out. Yes. I guess the other important aspect around elders and the elders' way is looking at the eventuality of our own demise, not being scared of that prospect, but bringing it alive and giving it. One of my thoughts is that old age is ascending rather than descending. And I know that Richard Raw, in a lot of his books, talks about going down the one of the journeys. I've forgotten what it is. So there you go. Yeah, what was the name of that?
Ascending up, descending upwards.
Descending up, standing up, upwards. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, here we go. I don't know where to go anymore with this, Greg. I guess you've got questions afterwards for people who want to ask you know, what's it all about? But again, I just reiterate that for elders, the encouragement for blokes is to be present in everything they do. And something around blessing. We've had to explain to a lot of older blokes, what do you mean by a blessing? Well, it's about your presence, about taking an interest in the other. When you happen to go shopping or whatever, and you're talking to a person behind the counter, it's engaged with them. It's being present. It's giving them, asking them something about themselves, and engaging with them rather than being, you know, a grumpy, complaining old bugger. I can do that very well. So there you go.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks very much. Yeah, there's a number of things floating around in what you said, and they've also been reflected a bit in other sessions today. I neglected to tell you about my background. I started out as a social worker working with young people, street kids and youth. Now, at my age, I'm working with older men all the time. I think that just naturally happens. But I'm getting so much satisfaction out of that. I do clinical work with men with cancer. I run a support group for men with cancer in Sydney. And here in Newcastle, I'm connected to a social support group and to one of the new programs you'll hear a lot more about, I hope, tomorrow, Mr. Perfect, that's spreading across Australia, running free barbecues for men and providing a space for them to talk about any mental well-being issues they may have. So I'm finding it incredibly enjoyable to be working with older men. I work with men of all ages, and this isn't saying that I don't like young men or anything, but I'm just finding it really rewarding to be working with older men. And I run a program that I'm revamping. It used to be called Meaning for Men, which is totally a one-day workshop when it was in person, about finding purpose and meaning in life. That's the stuff that I'm working in that area. And I've heard purpose and meaning being brought up a few times today by different speakers at different times. And that stuff about meaning for men, to me, the other word for it is spirituality. But, you know, that's part of our lives. But I think men have some problems with the word, you know, and what that means. So just before I open it up, because I want to open it up to a discussion, Alan is in the room from Tasmania. Alan? Is he with us? No, he's not. Somebody was messaging me that Alan was in the room, and he does a lot of good work in this area down in Tassie. So at this point, I want to open it up for everyone for a little while. The title of this session we're having is Mental Wellbeing, What's Working for Older Men. And you've all discussed that, what you're doing, and in the context of the coronavirus. Okay, we'll be past the coronavirus soon. If you do want to talk about the coronavirus again, I'm not closing that down, but what have we learnt from that? What was the good side of that? And what I'm trying to concentrate on, and when we had this session, was what's working for men, the positive things that you're all doing that are working for men. That's what this session, I would like to see this session highlight this. So I'm going to throw it open. You're going to have to indicate by hand or by using the little hand symbol down the bottom there, if you wanted to do that, if you want to speak. And I can throwing it open to people now. And there's this amazing silence. Yeah.
I think that's an attribute for us blokes, because we're so used to being able to jump and offer an opinion. Yeah. Kevin James.
Yes, thank you, Greg. I just had a general question with regard to funding and how that could be important for some organisations that struggle. I find personally, we don't struggle for funding, we struggle for awareness and how to engage the specific audience we want, because we only are able to meet Monday to Friday during work hours. We've excluded 90% of our potential volunteers who are working Monday to Friday, and that's the bulk of my inquiries online, because people read the fine print and then they go, oh, you don't meet on weekends? No, we don't have that arrangement with the nursing home. There is not enough staff. And that's where I think we're slightly more niche than other organisations such as Men's Shed, where, correct me if I'm wrong, they have different days and times and activities which you can choose from, where we're told this is when you must come, before lunch, after lunch, Monday to Friday, that's it. So we don't struggle with funding, we struggle with engagement. How do other organisations get that engagement going?
I'll open that up if somebody else wants. Yes, Frank.
Just commenting on that one, Kev, we get sponsored by a couple of businesses around town, and that was through running the International Men's Day. We did a breakfast last year, and we made contact with some very good businesses who like what we do and are basically there. If we need funds, then we go to them and they just basically say, how much do you want? And they give it to us. And we're very fortunate in that space. We're not asking for lots of money. But what I was going to say about Greg's initial question was that the positive for us has been that we've gone to these Zoom meetings and we've got the potential to reach a lot more blokes.
Yeah.
And we've also been connecting with other shed groups around Australia. And the Marumba Downs shed in Brisbane have initiated Monday nights every second week, and a different shed hosts that evening. And we're getting to see how other sheds are doing business.
That's great. Ross, did you have something you wanted to say? Ross, did you have something you wanted to say, or were we just stretching?
No, sorry, I was just fixing my screen up. Thank you.
Okay. Alan, I noticed you're back down there. Would you like to tell us about your work in Tasmania?
Well, I've got to say, I'm only here because of Wes. No, I saw your list. I saw your name on the list, Wes, and I thought, I've got to hear this guy. He and I were together at the Tasmanian Men's Gathering on the long weekend in March, and he and I started the the session of review and skits that night, and he
Ah.
set me up to introduce him for one of his shaggy dog stories. So hi, Wes. Humour is a great part of, I think, what being a man is. I'm enjoying, Greg, a kind of a creative brainstorming listening to these sessions today. I've written down lots of ideas to take to the men's group I go to. I've got a friend, close friend, who's struggling with dementia, and he's in denial. So he's on my mind. Another one of our men's group just rang. He messaged me this morning and said on the mobile phone, hey, I'm looking for a purpose. Shit, this is all linking into what you're talking about here today. And my wife just said to me, she's listened to some of these speakers in and out, she's come. She said, hey, what's your purpose, Alan? So my beloved is really, you know, asking me the same question, and I'm really enjoying it. Is all I want to say. And a final bit, probably what Glenn has referred to, is there's an article in a magazine called Men's Wellbeing. The Chemist Warehouse got 300 stores around the country. And again, because of our Men with Heart exhibition that us Tasmanian men have put together, a freelance journalist came to this exhibition in Tassie last year. She wrote a great little article about this annual men's gathering and men's stuff. And I happen to be the first person mentioned in the article. That's probably why I've been dobbed in. But yeah, the June issue of this Chemist Warehouse magazine, you'll see that is the front cover. Look out for that.
All right.
And on page, I think 19, there's a nice article. It's a great sort of opportunity for Men's Health Week in June and what we all are here for.
Great.
It's a short little piece. There we go. Man to Man. Available free at your Chemist Warehouse near you.
Excellent. Thanks for that plug. That's really good. Excellent.
Thank you, guys. I'll keep listening.
Peter.
Sure. I've just picked up on a kind of background when Alan mentioned purpose and meaning, you know, when we're looking at older men and how they operate and, you know, what's going on for them that creates that kind of elderly bewilderment that we often know about. And when we started researching and doing all the background work for the Elders Way, there were two things that we found are often missing from men. One is longing, you know, that they have a great longing to either share their story or know more about themselves in terms of the relationship with their family, their clan and their tribe. And if one knows that longing is present in the room when one is working for men, the entry point is just seamless into their stories and you know, they're willing, their wish and wanting to be known as who they are and that they matter in older age. So I find that a very powerful kind of entry point for working with older men. And it brings around another part of what's often missing when working with older men is the distinction between austerity and abundance. It sounds like the funny terms to use, but we older blokes often don't give ourselves a pat on the back, even in terms of how we want to be. We're always the last in the queue of our own life. And you know, we kind of work with the sense that we don't need praise and we don't need, you know, good wine and a nice bit of cheese and a whole lot of other things that, you know, if they're available in the same environment as talking about, you know, issues related to our age, there's a kind of comfort that enables a lot more willingness to speak and be out there. And as Wes has mentioned, you know, the family is the most important place in which an elder man can express himself. And it's so easy. All he needs to do is show up, really, and his family will start recognizing that he's actually interested in the life of his family and his community, and particularly younger men. And as Wes said, you know, creating a blessing. So that background term that we use in the Elders Way is that you need to show up as a witness to the life that's around you, and all the rest will just follow in easily. This is not rocket science. This is lovely stuff. And, you know, it's a great pleasure to be working with men and having, you know, creating an opportunity for them to have these kinds of sense of understandings about themselves and their family and their sense of service to their community and themselves, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So there we go. That's my little bit of pedestal talking there.
No, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, there's a lot in that. Miles, did you have something to say?
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a question probably more directed towards Wes and Peter, but I'd love to hear from the other guys. So I've been doing some work with men's sheds and really encouraging the guys to step forward as elders, you know, like to take their place, their place, honored place as elders in their families and their communities. And I notice a lot of the guys are, you know, they're keen, they're out there, they love it. But some of the guys are very reluctant, and they really don't have the confidence, and they really don't think anyone really wants to hear what they have to say. And I'd love to hear from you guys. How do you encourage older men who have something to say but don't, you know? One guy even said, oh, I did too many bad things in my life early on. No one would want to hear from me. And we're all going, that's exactly what we want to hear from you. So, you know, that's the kind of block I think some men face. What do you guys think?
I think Wes is jumping that.
For me, hello, Miles. For me, it's about, for men in circle, if you get a bunch of guys together in a circle, the first thing about is agreeing to a set of protocols. What will make it safe? What will make it safe for all of us men to be here in circle together and hear each other's story? So the compilation of putting together a protocol and the contribution comes from each man is, you know, I mean, that's the first thing that I would address when putting together a bunch of guys.
Kev?
Yeah, I was just going to say to Miles, I smiled when he said that, because that reflects my early experiences with leading sessions very well. And persistence is the only answer I have. To give you an example, we had a gentleman who wouldn't talk for 6 months. We had the circle, we had the stick going around, we'd give him the stick, and he's a pleasant fellow. And we knew he wanted to speak, but we didn't know that he could only speak on music, dance, and planes. And as soon as the stick got passed along, I'd ask him, now tell us about that plane again. And the stick would go back and you couldn't shut him up for 5 minutes. So sometimes it's a little bit sneaky what we're doing here, but persistence, that's the only thing I'm going to say, and providing that safe space that was mentioned so well just a few minutes ago.
Great. Frank? Frank, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, Miles, that's the area we really deal in Shed Happens, is that we interview blokes about their life, the good, the bad, the happy and the sad. And what we always do, first of all, is have a pre-interview over a cup of coffee a week or so before and flesh out, you know, what sort of questions we may ask them on the night. And oftentimes, particularly in the dark spots of their life, they might say, because at the end of the pre-interview, I'll say, now, is there anything we've discussed today you don't want brought up on the night? And he might say, well, look, I'd like you to not mention about the pornography. Okay, won't mention that. And lo and behold, you'll get into the middle of the interview and you'll say, so what's been one of your greatest struggles, mate? And he'll go, pornography. And then he'll flesh it out and say how it's dominated his life and et cetera, et cetera. And it only then takes a little bit of a push to dig a bit deeper and be, as Kev said, a bit persistent. But at the end of the night, after he's told his story, 99 times out of 100 he'll come up to me and he'll say, "Gee, I'm glad I did that." That's
great.
Right up.
Yep. Jeff Lawrence, did you?
Yes, just a little bit of background. I lead a number of different men's groups, men's sharing groups. I lead a men's contemplative bushwalking retreat. We take men away for a weekend and we just facilitate a safe space. And then all day Saturday is just a silent walk in the bush. And Saturday nights we just say to the guys, so guys, what happened on the day? And they just open up and share. But out of that, I got asked to look after a number of different men's groups, and now I've been asked to mentor different people. And like Wes and Peter had younger men saying, Jeff, you're an elder. We need you to stand up and be an elder. That's what you are. And we need you to start doing that work and being that role. And I stepped up to do it. So my answer to that question before, how do you get men to stand up to be elders? I guess from my personal experience, we've talked about creating a safe space where men can share. These men created a safe space where I could be an elder. I suppose one of my personal metaphors in life is I've been 6'4" since I've been about 14, and used to continually have people trying to cut me down. So, and I used to walk physically with a hunch so I wouldn't stand out. So my personal journey for many years has been my full size, standing up and being my full 6'4" size. And I suppose that's also translated to emotionally and psychologically and spiritually, standing up and being my full size and being my full self. So I've found that if I'm in groups where I can do that as an elder, and my friends and my peer group and the young people have said, you know, have made it a safe space, and others that I work with, I guess that's personally how I've been able to stand up and be an elder in that small group of people that I work with. And I suppose the other thing that's been really helpful for me is that I don't have to change the world. I just have to be an elder in that small circle of men that come my way. Know that me doing the best I can. There's a jazz singer called Cleo Lane, and she's got a song where it says, the least you can do is the best you can. So I guess I've become content with, if I do the best I can in whatever circle I'm in, that'll be enough. And yeah, like Wes, I guess I've really focused on how can I be a blessing to other people. And I suppose I missed the first part of this morning's session because one of those mates that I've been a mentor to, who's older than me, I just found out he's critically ill in hospital. So when they say, Jeff, would you do the funeral? You think, yeah. So sorry, that was perhaps a little bit more of a talk rather than a question, but
no.
We've got to make it a safe space for our men to step up and be elders.
Yeah. And
make it a safe space where men can step up and share their wisdom.
Sure.
And also make it a safe space where they can say, actually, I don't know. Can you help me?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the key to a lot of this work. Obviously, creating, you're all talking about it in this area of creating a safe space is so important. And some of the other things we've had sometimes over 100 people in earlier in the week, Monday and Tuesday, and it's their first experience of of being around people who work in the men's health sector. And there were things like, you know, we've moved on from the big problem in the world is men who don't talk to the big problem in the world is the people who work with men don't listen very well. Because men know how to talk. There's not a problem there. And a lot of people, even this last week, have repeated things like, oh, yeah, I run a group. My biggest problem is getting them to shut up, which is exactly what happens to me too. I've walked away and left men talking on the street. You know, I had to go home. So it's not hard to get men to talk if we set up that safe environment and if we listen. And it's been also in the context of sessions we've had on suicide prevention. Listening is vitally important. And we're now, I feel some of the training in that area is like starting to do you want to come for 3 and 4 hours and let us teach you how to listen properly? Because that's one of the key things about listening to men and picking up on things that they're saying that are quite important and that we can miss, or healthcare workers in general can miss. One of the other things I picked up from an interesting talk today by James Wild, who's the CEO of the Men's Sheds Association in Western Australia, and they've done some research, which I really think is great, about the effects of men not being able to go to the shed. And one of his slides said that what they found out was 50% of men who were in sheds actually doing okay. And it's really interesting when you think about unpacking that. I would have thought the figure would have been lower first up, but no, 50% is pretty good. But maybe with that 50%, they know that this will be over and the shed will reopen and they've got somewhere to go. So that might explain that. I worry a bit more about men who don't go to sheds at all, who are in their 60s or 70s and are socially isolated. I would worry more about them because they've been forced into isolation or we've added to their isolation. And I think we will have a lot of work to do once the virus is, once the isolation parts of this are over. But I felt quite encouraged here that 50% of men who go to men's sheds have been all right with it. And I think that's the power of men's sheds probably, and also the power of men who come to your groups and workshops that you run on a regular basis. It's great to hear some of them are opening up again in WA and Queensland, I think, said that they were going to have a meeting tonight. So we are getting there. We're getting there. We've got a bit more time and Glenn's come back. Yes.
Step in and say that officially this session finished at 3:15, so we're 5 minutes over.
Oh, God.
So it's been fantastic. I believe that I created a bit of panic earlier by disappearing and not enabling Ross to share his slides. I apologise profusely, Ross. I'm going to confess. This is a really safe listening space. I'm going to confess that I said this morning, if anything goes wrong this week, it will be on this day. We've got some older gentlemen who may have some issues with technology. And of course, the one issue we had was caused by me, the 50-year-old. So I apologise profusely.
I think we got through.
But you got through. Thank you. I went off to take a phone call and then came back and found the messages. I apologise.
No,
so
that's all right.
A really long day, but we'll keep the room open for as long as you want now. But we'll say that this session is officially closed, and thank Greg for beautifully facilitating, and for Frank, and for I'm losing track. I wasn't even here.
Ross, Kevin,
Wes, Peter, for a wonderful contribution. I
came in
for the last 45 minutes of that conversation. It was just